Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. I hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. I can tell you one thing, man, I sure as hell did. I took a nice little break over the holiday weekend as well. Just between college ending a few weeks ago and it's starting up again here in a few weeks, and me uploading almost every day for the past 6 months or so, which, hey, I love it just as much as the next guy, but sometimes, you just kind of need a little bit of a refresh and just to kind of get your stuff back together. But I can tell you one thing, man. Really feels good being back here recording for you guys here today, especially with the NFL season coming to a close, the NBA season ramping up. We got playoff seedings finalizing here in the next couple of days. So we got a lot of good stuff to talk about here today. But before we get into today's video, if you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we're now on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. And if you love sports talk, you love sports content, updated rankings every week, even just shooting the shit here almost every day during the week. Man, this is the place to be at, and I promise you, it'll be well worth it. So let's get into today's video, man, starting off with the Rams and the Falcons, 27-24 last night. The Falcons pulling off an upset over the Rams. Look, I've been kind of saying this with the Rams over the last couple of weeks, is like, they're kind of silently falling apart. They're not necessarily completely collapsing, necessarily like the Colts or Tampa or just something like that, but they're kind of silently starting to fall apart a little bit. One thing we forget is that Matthew Stafford is completely prone to kind of these stink bomb games. It's been like that his whole career, and he's had an incredible season this year. And again, some of those things that kind of mask some of their issues is just Matthew Stafford has played fantastic this year. I think Drake May actually fell back into the play or the MVP favorite again today, but he's been the MVP favorite for the last, 5-6 weeks or so. And really the entire season, Matthew Stafford has. It's really just been between him and Drake May and Jonathan Taylor and them earlier in the year, but obviously they've kind of fallen off as the Colts have collapsed. But, between the Rams defense, I think some of their issues are kind of starting to become glaring a little bit. I mean, dude, Bijan Robinson just ran all over them yesterday. I mean, it kind of looked like Derrick Henry in Green Bay back Saturday night or something like that. Derrick Henry was basically just a one-man wrecking crew against the Green Bay Packers, and we've seen how injury depleted the Packers defense is. I mean, how they lost Micah Parsons, like they've lost some pretty elite players on that defense, and it's like for the Rams is they don't really have any major injuries on defense, at least any that I can think of. And that's a little worrisome. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes was kind of playing out of his mind there for a little bit, but he's falling back down to earth. And, meanwhile, he's not necessarily quite the corner he was on the Commanders, but, I mean, he's an average corner at best. I think they lack a little bit of depth there at the cornerback position. I mean, they just get toasted. And one of the things is with the Rams was last year, their pass rush was really good. Like Jared Verse had a really young, ferocious pass rush, and they still do have a really good pass rush, but it's not quite as good as it was last year. And I think the one concern I have with the Rams is not necessarily their offense. Again, like I mentioned, Matthew Stafford is prone to these stink bomb games. Like he had one against the Panthers a few weeks ago. They ended up losing that game. But they lost to the Seahawks last week. I mean, they fell apart last week against the Seahawks. So they almost came back in this game. But, one of the things I thought with Stafford is that, I mean, those interceptions he had the pick six, which I think he actually tied the most pick sixes in an NFL career yesterday, which is not necessarily a stat you want to have. But hey, he played on those shitty Lions teams for years. I mean, my God, you stick Jared Goff in there from 2009 to 2021. I'm sure he'd almost have the same result there. I mean, they were awful for a long time. And that's kind of one of the things that, a lot of these younger fans kind of forget is like, you've seen the Lions over the last couple of years, and meanwhile, they're going to miss out on the playoffs this year. They're not quite terrible. I mean, they've been disappointing. There's no doubt about that, but they haven't necessarily been at a level with, the Jets or Cleveland, even though Cleveland beat the Steelers this weekend, but they haven't necessarily been on a level like that over the past, 3-4 years now. I mean, those years with Matthew Stafford in Detroit were just, those teams were atrocious. And they were dealing with Matt Patricia, God, I forget what's his name? Caldwell, I think. I forget that coach's name, man. He was there for a while, like 10 some years ago. But anyway, man, I watched last night, just a lot of picks. What do you have? He had 3 interceptions last night, threw a couple of good touchdowns. Puka Nacua at the end of the game would have had probably the catch of the season if he ended up making that catch where he was going out of bounds and he snagged it in with one hand, but didn't end up doing so. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to bash him for that. It was a pretty ridiculous effort in the first place, but Stafford had. It was one of their speedsters down the field there. He probably would have had a touchdown to win the game. I think it was the first play of that drive. They didn't have a lot of time. I think they had like 15 seconds with no timeouts to go 30 yards to get in field goal range. He had a receiver like wide open for a touchdown. I seen him miss that. I was like, yeah, the Rams probably are not going to win that game. I mean, that's prime opportunity right there. And one thing, man, is I think Stafford's kind of falling back in the MVP race here. I think as of today, Drake May is the MVP favorite again. And, I'm a Patriots fan. When I talk on here, I do put bias aside and all. And even if I wasn't a Patriots fan, I'd say to this point, especially after the last couple of games, he did have a good performance against the Seahawks. I mean, he put up, I think it was 400 some yards against the Seahawks, which is hard to do. And you see what that Seahawks defense just did to Bryce Young and the Panthers a couple of days ago. I mean, they didn't even look like an NFL team on offense. It was awful. You got to give Stafford a lot of credit there. And again, their defense collapsed last week too. Their defense collapsed against the Seahawks. I mean, that's really my main worry with the Rams. And Sean McVay, he did say their players are playing next week. Which, respectfully so. I don't think, or I know the Rams can't get the number 1 seed anymore. I don't think they can win their division anymore, especially with the Seahawks and 49ers playing this week, which is going to be, I mean, right up there with the Ravens and Steelers. Maybe not quite as high stakes as that game, but it's going to be a fantastic game. I think whoever wins that game gets the number 1 seed, if I'm correct. I guess if I had to take a team to win that game, I'd probably take Seattle right now. But the 49ers, God, what a story they've been all year. Even with all the injuries, I mean, they're competing for the number 1 seed. And still, really, to be honest with you, no one believes in the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, yeah, maybe people aren't quite as down on them as they were a few months ago when they had all those injuries. I mean, I remember the first time they played against the Rams, and they were out there rolling with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's now in Pittsburgh. And, I mean, Kendrick Bourne, who was just shipped there like a few weeks prior. I mean, no Kittle, beat up kind of McCaffrey there. It was Mac Jones, no Brock Purdy, no Ricky Pearsall, and Bosa and all them were hurt. And I was like, I made a video about the 49ers being done. I put it as my caption as the San Francisco 49ers are done with the red siren emoji right next to it. I was like, man, it is code red for the 49ers. And for them to be in the spot here is pretty incredible. And, for the Falcons last night, and I guess this kind of leads me into my next talking point. It's like whether or not Raheem Morris will keep his job. But before I get into that, it's like watching the Falcons last night with all the talent they have, there is no reason they should be a 7-9 team, especially with their division collapsing like they are. I mean, Tampa Bay, compared to what they've been the last couple of years, I mean, even before that with the Brady years, I mean, I think they've won, 5 consecutive NFC South titles, I mean, including Brady and Mayfield. I mean, they've really kind of just owned that division. I mean, New Orleans hasn't really been competitive in God knows how long, even though it's looking like their future is kind of bright with Tyler Shuck, surprisingly enough, right now. They actually look decent, but, Carolina's been awful forever. I mean, Atlanta, even in the last couple of years, and Matt Ryan weren't very good. So it's really just been Tampa's division. And Tampa kind of falling back this year. And look, you look at the talent Atlanta has like last night. Bijan, really by the time his career is all said and done, could be like an all-time level running back. I mean, him and Jahmyr Gibbs, who went in the same draft, they're kind of similar to me, those pass-catching backs that if you just let them get out in open field, man, there's no catching those guys. They are so fast. I think Bijan's probably better in terms of, his juke moves and stuff like that. But, we're splitting hairs here. I mean, these two are some of the best running backs in the NFL with very similar play styles. I remember when the Lions got absolutely torched for drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, including myself. I was like, really, you're going to draft a running back when you already have Montgomery? There was other players there that were really intriguing for the Lions. And it's like, you take Jahmyr Gibbs, who was projected to go 30-something overall. And, I thought it was just pretty crazy. I was sitting there like, at that point, you might as well just trade it up for Bijan. And Bijan, man, If you had him in your fantasy last night, congrats on winning your fantasy championship. I mean, Jesus, what a night from him last night. And just between guys like Drake London, I know the Falcons have been injured for a bit this year. Michael Penix has been out for weeks now. Darnell Mooney, who's kind of fallen off a cliff, but they have elite talent. I just don't think their coaching is great, which leads me into this point here of will Raheem Morris keep his job upcoming next year? I know they've been on a little bit of a heater here. Kirk Cousins hasn't played too bad. How did he do last night? I have the stats pulled up here. How did he do last night? 13 for 20, 126 and a touchdown. I mean, I remember watching him last night and I was like, he wasn't too impressive, kind of just did what he needed to do to win, but didn't really do too much, to be honest with you. One thing with Raheem Morris, and like I mentioned a few minutes ago about the NFC South, that, I mean, it's just been one of the worst divisions in football for years now. Really since Drew Brees left and Matt Ryan's been out of his prime, Cam Newton left, that division's kind of been a joke, to be honest with you. And before Tom Brady got there, the Buccaneers were kind of the butt of the joke in that division, to be honest with you. Drew Brees, they all kind of laughed at that team, the Cam Newton teams, the Matt Ryan teams. Like, they were like, oh, Tampa. But, Raheem Morris, I did a little bit of a comparison to last year's season with him. They were 8-9 last year. And one thing I always make a point with a coach is, like, how much better do they get the next year? It's like, Atlanta, they did have high hopes last year. They were in talks of signing Bill Belichick. You end up signing Raheem Morris, who has had head coaching stints before, hasn't been very successful, but it's like, you're willing to take the risk. And they didn't pan out last year, and it's not panning out this year either. And one of my points I always make with the head coach is, how much better does that team get the next year after their first year? Always kind of give a team a benefit of the doubt. Again, Atlanta wasn't quite in a situation like if you were to be a head coach of the Jets or the Giants last year or something like that. Like, they had pretty elite level talent last year, and including this year as well. And they were 8-9, fell just short. And I was like, I was kind of in favor of them firing Raheem Morris last year, but I was like, you know what? You ended up signing him. You might as well try to give him another year. I get it. And they're on pace to finish the exact same as they were last year. They play New Orleans this week, which by any means is not necessarily a gimme game. I mean, New Orleans has been playing really well. I'm curious to see how good New Orleans is going to be next year, but that's a topic for another day. If they have a good offseason, I could see New Orleans kind of being like a New England Patriots story this year, a Commanders story last year, potentially. Like, they have some stuff to work with there. Kellen Moore seems to kind of be like a hit of a coach. He doesn't really have much to work with, and look at what they've been doing the last month or so. They've been great. So, with the division crumbling, all the talent they've had, and I know Michael Penix has been hurt, but even before Michael Penix got hurt, I mean, this team was kind of in shambles. I think they were like 4-7 when he got hurt or something like that. So, and people have been arguing, should they go back to starting Kirk Cousins or get another quarterback next year? One thing I'm concerned about with Michael Penix is his injury history. He's been known for his injuries, and he hasn't really necessarily looked great when he's played. I blame some of that on Zach Robinson and kind of the offensive scheme. Is like, Penix is a gunslinger. He loves just slinging that shit down the field, and it's always kind of these little 7-8 yard out routes to Drake London. When you have a receiver who is a small forward in basketball, shooting guard, small forward in basketball, 6'5", or a ridiculous wingspan, it's like Michael Penix is salivating by when to throw the ball down the field 40 yards down the stripes to Drake London. Like, that's what he wants to do more than anything else. And like Zach Robinson, his scheme has just kind of limited that more than anything else this year. So I don't really like his scheme. I don't really like Raheem Morris's hires either. And meanwhile, their defense has been getting better throughout the last couple of weeks. Like I mentioned, man, to me, progress speaks for a lot. They are the exact same as they were last year. So, if you keep them next year, what is it going to be? 8-9, 9-8, maybe? I mean, they get off to these just kind of atrocious starts and just collapse midway through the season, and then they have strong endings to the season. So, to me, Raheem Morris has had multiple chances as a head coach, even just besides his most recent stint here with Atlanta. He's had other chances as well, has fallen flat as well. So this is where I don't see it changing. And one of the things I have, or one of the things I have to say is like, this head coaching cycle, there's not necessarily a Ben Johnson. There's not necessarily a game-changing coach. And for one, I think Atlanta needs an offensive head coach. I'm not one of those people to be like, oh, you hire a defensive head coach. What the hell are you doing, man? You've done sold your soul. This team is not going to be good. You hire a defensive head coach. Offensive head coaches are the new wave, this and that. I'm not necessarily a person who believes in that, but I am a person who believes into where, like, if you hire an offensive head coach and you have elite offensive personnel, which the Falcons do have, they have elite players on the offensive side of the ball, and they are just being completely underutilized. Like, they're being completely misused. It's like, I think they could use someone to go in there and spark Michael Penix, spark this offense, because that's what it needs. And I think as you go in there and you hire a really good defensive coordinator, this team could work. Again, they have really good defensive players as well. Now, they don't have their first-round pick coming up this year. This goes to the Rams, of course, who, are going to be trying to play for a spot in the Super Bowl, which is just crazy to think of. Decisions like that have also held the Falcons back for years. Raheem Morris, I was like, last year, like I mentioned, I was like, I didn't hate them for keeping Raheem Morris, but I thought when you had a pretty elite head coaching cycle last year, and it's not necessarily a destination that's like, oh my God, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to the Jets. Like, you're telling me Aaron Glenn, who he would have went to the Falcons over the Jets. Now, Aaron Glenn, I'm actually going to talk about him here later in the video. No, I'm not saying that would have been a better hire than Raheem Morris. I'm not even saying I'd probably rather keep Raheem Morris to this point than Aaron Glenn. That probably wasn't a great example. But when you have guys like Ben Johnson, maybe he would have taken Atlanta over Chicago. I don't know. So I thought last year maybe they should have made the change. But this year, it's not necessarily an elite head coaching cycle. Maybe you go out and you stack Mike McCarthy or something just to get some sort of stability. Oh, he could call that offense in a heartbeat. But I don't know. You guys let me know what you're thinking and who they should hire. But they're just on pace to be the same as they were last year, and the division is worse. Yeah, Carolina might be a little better, but you're telling me Atlanta's not better than Carolina? You go roster for roster, yeah, Atlanta's better than Carolina. They shouldn't be in this situation at all right now. So Stefon Diggs, I'm sure a lot of y'all have probably seen this morning that he has charges for supposedly strangulation and assault. Now, when I'm on here talking about this, he's innocent until proven guilty, and apparently his defense team, hold on, let me pull it up. Give me one sec. Stefon Diggs denies these allegations. His lawyer said in a statement to E! News on December 30th. They are unsustained and were never investigated because they did not occur. The timing and motivation for making the allegations is crystal clear. They are the direct result of an employee-employer financial dispute that was not resolved to the employee's satisfaction. Stefon looks forward to establishing the truth in a court of law. So, look, no one knows what's going on, really. I will say, though, that the timing of this just really sucks. Like, if it did happen, which I'm not saying it did, and I'm also not saying it didn't happen, I don't know. I know just as much as you guys. I'm just going on about what I'm reading. Again, we'll see here whatever it goes into a court of law or whatever. But the timing of this just really sucks. Like, New England, he was seen as a seasoned veteran. I'm sure he still is. Like, he has been a big mentor in the locker room for the younger guys. And I think it's shown because if you've watched Patriots games over the last few years, and even the last years of Brady, that's why they've had to go out and buy Randy Moss, Wes Welker. They've had to go out and buy receivers because they can't bring up a group of receivers through their draft class. Because I've always said is like, I don't think they've had a good enough veteran presence. Obviously you have guys like Julian Edelman in past years and stuff like that, but I think he's made a really good change in terms of being a veteran and bringing up these young guys and really showing them how to be an elite receiver in the NFL. Like, this is the fastest I've ever seen a group of receivers really develop in a New England system. I mean, seriously. And here's the thing is, like, they still have Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels was still there when they drafted N'Keal Harry, and they couldn't develop him. Now, don't get me wrong. I think he was just a bust anyway. Like, sometimes some of these guys really are just busts, but, you have like Jalen Polk last year. They drafted him ahead of Vlad McConkey. He was basically a first-round pick. I think he was picked like, I think they traded back and didn't end up getting McConkey or something like that. All I know is that they could have had him, but didn't draft him. They ended up getting Jalen Polk somehow, some way. And they ended up trading him to the Saints. And it was basically a first-round pick last year. It's like they couldn't develop him. I think he had like 90 yards receiving or something last year. It was atrocious. And I think Diggs has really brought a veteran presence to their locker room. And look, I don't know if this will soil it. Again, everything's innocent until proven guilty. But I've always said with people, and not saying that he did do it, I'm just trying to make sure, I'm trying to establish that. I'm not trying to call him an asshole or anything like that, because if he were to do this and, strangle someone and assault somebody, yeah, he's an asshole. I've never understood people, especially because I'm not necessarily pointing this at Stefon Diggs, but it's just happened in sports, and in the NBA and the NFL. People get in all these assault, like Ray Rice with the Ravens years ago, Kareem Hunt. I've never understood people when you have all this fame, right? And it's like, whether you're in a public setting or whatever, people know who you are, and you're just going to do some stupid shit, like lay your hands on somebody. And especially if it's just over something just stupid, whether it's a female, whether it's a male, I never understand why you do that, regardless whether or not you have a celebrity spotlight or whether you're just an average Joe. Like, it doesn't matter. Look, I always get defending yourself. Like if you legitimately, if someone's coming up to you and they are just trying to beat the shit out of you or whatever it was, and you're just standing there, sipping a beer or whatever it is, and all of a sudden someone just comes up on you, like, I get defending yourself. I've been in a fight in my life before. I've had to get in situations like that, but I don't go looking for them. And that's what I don't get with certain players. It's like certain players just take it to another level, especially when you're in the public eye. It's like, just don't do dumb shit. And I do not understand it. That just goes for every walk of life. Like I mentioned, whether you're an NFL player, whether you work up in a government building in your state, whether you work at the local Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's, like I do not understand people who do that. I don't, for no reason. I don't know. Again, not a lot is known about what is going on. It just came out today, but in the timing of a playoff push or a number one seed push, you're looking at maybe clinching the number one seed here on Sunday, and that a lot of that falls on the Chargers and Broncos game. But I don't understand. And if this does come out to where he is guilty, bro, you're seen as a veteran presence. You're grown. Hell, you're with Cardi B right now, who is a celebrity within herself. I mean, whether you like her or you don't, I mean, you're even more in the public eye than you were before. You're maybe a potential Hall of Famer at receiver. Whether or not he does get in, I don't know, but he'll definitely be on the ballot. Just stupid shit. I don't know why people do that. Again, like I said for the 15th time, I'm not saying he did do it, but if he did, man, the situation you're in, and you have Vrabel, you're in a stable situation, and you're seen as someone as people look up to in the organization right now. A lot of young guys on that team, not even just on the receiving corps. Drake May's like my age. I'm 22. I think he's like 23. I think he just turned 23 like a couple of months ago. I mean, guys legitimately look up to you, and you go and do that. So I hope he didn't do it, but if he did, man, just a lot of really just stupid decision-making right there. With the Colts collapsing and the Buccaneers collapsing here throughout midway through the season and just so on right now, I think the Bucs have lost like 7 of their last 9 games or something like that. I forget the exact statistic, but they've lost a lot of their games. And the Colts, the same. I mean, they were 8-2 at one point. They're eliminated. I think they're just looking at going 9-8 now. I think they've lost like 6 straight. Now, Daniel Jones getting hurt did not help at all. I mean, that really sucks for them, but I think if the Colts could go back, they would take back those 2 first-round picks in a heartbeat for Sauce Gardner. I think things kind of started going downhill when they made that Sauce Gardner trade. I'm not saying the guy's a curse. I'm not saying anything like that, or he brought some bad juju in the locker room. But stuff like that, again, I think Daniel Jones going down really, really sucked for them. But one thing, too, is like before Daniel Jones got hurt, and he was playing on an injury, I get that, they were kind of starting to slowly collapse a little bit. Like Jonathan Taylor, teams were starting to bottle him up. Daniel Jones, that Steelers game they played, he threw a lot of interceptions and had a lot of turnovers in that game. They played against the Falcons. I think it was in Berlin or London, or it was some international game they were playing in. Daniel Jones had lost the ball 3 or 4 times. And luckily for the Colts, they recovered it every single time he ended up fumbling the ball. And Daniel Jones has always been known for fumbling issues his whole career. Dates back to his rookie year on the Giants. He's always been known. I don't know if you guys remember that play he had. I think it was against the Eagles. It was years ago. I think it was 5 years ago or something like that. Oh, he was sprinting. He was out in the open space, had a touchdown, and he ended up just stumbling over himself. He's always been kind of known as a sloppy, kind of clumsy player a little bit. I mean, it doesn't mean he can't be good. And supposedly they're looking at extending him. I hope, that doesn't necessarily matter to me. I'm not hoping he doesn't get paid, but I'm just like, for the Colts' sake, you just traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner, and they're potentially looking at extending him, which, look, I'm assuming, especially with them bringing Phillip Rivers back out of retirement, this Anthony Richardson thing is done. I mean, they basically wasted the 4th overall pick on him when there was other guys there on the board. They took a big swing, they missed, and I'm curious to see where Anthony Richardson's going to play in 2026. I don't know if he'll be a starter, but basically I think the Colts have waved the white flag on Anthony Richardson with them looking to extend Daniel Jones, bringing Phillip Rivers out of retirement. I know Richardson was on IR, but he's not anymore. I don't think he's been on IR in 2 weeks or something like that. So that's a story not a lot of people have been talking about. They're like, oh, well, they don't necessarily want to play Riley Leonard. I guess they think Phillip Rivers is their best chance to win. It's a cool story, but it's like, you also have Anthony Richardson, which if you're talking in the business world of things for football, it's like, you're not going to start him next year. You might as well kind of go out there and see what you can get for him. If he goes out there and plays really well and you're already pretty much mathematically eliminated, this week, I'd say we all love Phillip Rivers and we'll never see him play again after this week, which I'm assuming he's starting this week. But, if the Colts are being smart about it, I'd stick Richardson out there. And if he has a really good game, it may up his trade value. It may up it, maybe go from a 6th-round pick to maybe a 5th, maybe a 5th to a 4th. Anthony Richardson's trade value isn't going to be a 1st-round pick or a 2nd or even a 3rd, maybe even a 4th. But, teams are desperate for QBs, especially backup QBs. You see the way they've been going down this season. There's been 38, or maybe even more than that, starting QBs this season or something like that. There's been a lot. So a lot of injuries this year. And I think if the Colts are going to be smart about it, they go out and start Richardson this weekend. Maybe they are. Maybe I just haven't seen it, but I doubt it. They haven't even talked about him. The media is not really talking about that enough, which I think is kind of crazy, to be honest with you. This guy was the 4th overall pick a few years ago, but I guess a lot of people were just out on him. I don't know if you guys have seen that clip. I think he was on a podcast, or he said something somewhere, and he was saying, "Oh, I think the NFL is too easy. I think the NFL is way easier than college." It's like, dude, you barely throw. I don't even think he throws a 50% completion percentage. He had 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. It's like, before you talk shit, you might want to put your money where your mouth is, bro. And yeah, you got a lot more money than me, but in terms of your play on the field, dude, I don't know, bro. The Colts, I think they're kind of in some deeper water than some people think. I think their future, again, they don't have their 1st-round picks, and this is kind of where you can use those picks, even though this year wouldn't necessarily be the highest or the highest pick in the world. But what are they going to draft? 15th, somewhere around there, 15th, 16th. So maybe you could trade up if you had a pick, and maybe try to get your quarterback of the future if you really wanted to say, Daniel Jones, this injury thing, and he did play well for us. We had a winning record, but maybe we should really be looking at the future, because for the last 6 years since Andrew Luck retired, we've just been kind of playing Band-Aid with the quarterback position. So I'm curious to see what the Colts do, man. I think they're in deeper water than some people think. I think we're having fun with the Phillip Rivers comeback story, and Jonathan Taylor was in the MVP conversation for a little bit, but I look every year a team gets older, and guys like Quentin Nelson, they get older. You're going to lose guys. Like, I don't know, man. I think that Sauce Gardner trade is going to have a more impact on them than I really think they think is going to happen. So, and then in terms of the Buccaneers, this collapse is different. I mean, Baker has kind of taken some hits this year. He's gotten up to points, and he's sitting there, he's holding his shoulder, and you wonder. It's like I look back to those Cleveland days, as last year in Cleveland, he wore that big shoulder brace all season, and people were like, Baker, like, sit it out, dude. You're kind of just tanking your stock. You're not playing as well as you have been in previous years. Like, yeah, just sit it out. But Baker played through it, and then it ended up getting him cut from or traded from Cleveland to Carolina. Then he ended up leaving Carolina, going to LA, kind of had a little bit of a resurgence in LA, and now we know how he's been in Tampa over the last few years. But I think the Buccaneers collapse is there's two reasons for it. I think the first one is I think they're really missing Liam Cohen and Dave Canales. And we've seen it with the Lions. Like, when you lose really good coordinators, it's not just, oh, well, we can just plug one in that's even half decent and we'll make it work because our players are really good. The Bucs do have elite offensive talent. They've had some injuries. Mike Evans been hurt this year. Chris Godwin was hurt at the beginning of the year. They drafted Ibuka, who's kind of been hot and cold to this point of the season right now. But I think they're really missing Liam Cohen and Dave Canales. We seen it with the Lions. Like, coordinators are not necessarily just a kind of, you just kind of plug a decent one in and you can replace it because you have high talent. Like, Ben Johnson, how much are they really missing him? Now, people knew with the Ben Johnson replacement, you're not going to replace Ben Johnson with someone else like that. Like, Ben Johnson is like a one in every 7-8 years kind of hire, like a Kyle Shanahan, like those kind of hires. Sean McVay, you don't get those very often. That's the kind of hire Ben Johnson is. It's going to be another probably 5-6 years before we get another kind of elite offensive hire like that. I mean, maybe it's sooner. There's a lot of offensive talent in the league right now, but I can't think of one, especially coming out this year. And also their defensive coordinator. Like, yeah, Aaron Glenn isn't really having much success, if any at all, in New York right now. Which, again, I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit, but those guys are not easy to replace. They're not. They are elite at what they do. And Dave Canales right now, even though the Panthers this week, whether or not they do make the playoffs, they have dramatically improved from what they've been over the last, since Cam Newton, like really like almost 10 years ago. Like, 8 years, the last 8 years, Carolina's just been a joke. They haven't made the playoffs since 2017, going on 9 years now. It's going to be 2026 in like 48 hours. It's crazy. Like, Liam Cohen with the Jags. The Jags have been a laughingstock my whole life. They've had a couple of outlier years. They had the 2017 year with Saxonville and Blake Bortles and that group of guys and Jalen Ramsey, but what have the Jags done since? They won a playoff game a few years ago. They were 9-8 and stuck in with Doug Peterson. They came back against the Chargers and that Brandon Staley team. I think that was more on Brandon Staley than the Jags' miraculous comeback. Brandon Staley is probably known as one of the worst head coaches in NFL history. He was just awful. And they were up by 4 scores in that game. The Jags ended up coming back. They were getting torched at the start of that game. They still ended up winning the game, of course, and they were pretty competitive with Kansas City in the divisional round as well, and in the next week. But you look at Liam Cohen and what he's done with the Jags. They are potentially playing for a number 1 seed. Are they going to get it? Probably not. I can't see New England losing, and I also can't see Denver losing as well. I think that would put Jacksonville at the number 1 seed, but they're going to win their division. They're going to be a top 4 seed. That's pretty incredible compared to where they were at last year. How he's made Trevor Lawrence look. Trevor Lawrence has looked the best he has in his entire career this year. Genuinely. Even better than that year he had with Doug Peterson. I mentioned where they went 9-8, and he looked better that year. Lawrence kind of been rocky throughout the start of the season and midway through the season this year, but to end it, he's looked fantastic. He really has. He's looked the best he's ever looked. So clearly he has some sort of impact. And I think the Buccaneers are missing those two. And also, I think on top of Todd Bowles. I think Todd Bowles has lasted longer than anyone has thought, especially when he replaced Bruce Arians, which was kind of unexpected. People didn't really expect Bruce Arians to all of a sudden retire, but he did. And Todd Bowles stepped in, and I was like, oh, God. And I remember after Brady's last year, people were like, okay, are they going to can Todd Bowles? They barely made the playoffs. They got destroyed by the Cowboys in the wild card round. And people were like, oh, well, Baker's in here. Like, are they going to kind of get a fresh start here? No, they kept Todd Bowles. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They won the division again last year. It was looking like they were going to win it this year. Maybe they still are. But they're in deep water. Again, kind of like the Colts, like, maybe not necessarily in terms of their future quite being in jeopardy. I think they need a new coach and kind of a new staff. Again, Todd Bowles coaches a defense, and their defense isn't very good. I love the Ibuka pick, but at the same time, it's like maybe they I still think they should have drafted someone on defense. Like, I really like McMillan, who they drafted in the second round. I don't think they really needed another first-round receiver, to be honest with you. I think that's one thing people kind of talk about as well, or don't really talk about with the Buccaneers. It's like, did they really need another first-round receiver? I don't really think so. I think they would have rather have had that on a pass rusher, a linebacker, a corner. I think that was way more of a position in need for the Bucs. I thought they were going to draft Will Johnson over Ibuka. That's where I thought Will Johnson was going to go when I kept seeing him falling in the draft this year. But yeah, man, I think Todd Bowles, that we seen Mike Evans steaming on the sideline a few weeks ago against Atlanta. I mean, he was pissed. He was really pissed. And Todd Bowles' post-game conference, he was just cussing up a storm, dude. I mean, people were on him like, how unprofessional is this for a coach to lead this way? And he's been claiming that the locker room isn't in shambles, but we see the way your players are playing, bro. They got no heart. They're falling apart. They just got their ass kicked by Quinn Ewers in the Miami Dolphins a couple of days ago, which the Dolphins, they have 7 wins. They're not necessarily a laughingstock like they were at the beginning of the season, but your team is better than Miami. I look at almost every aspect. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are way better than the Miami Dolphins. They are. They should have went in there and won that game in a high-pressure situation, and they just didn't. They didn't even really look competitive. Baker had a few turnovers, and his play's been pretty subpar, but over the last, 9-10 weeks or so compared to where he started at the beginning of the season. But, I just think his messages just weren't then. That's how I feel about the Bucs, but both these teams collapsing, man. They got reasons, and they do. The Raiders here, should they keep Fernando Mendoza? Obviously, they're going to get the number 1 overall pick after losing the toilet bowl. That's what people are calling it on Sunday against the Giants. It's definitely looking like they're going to get Mendoza. They play a pretty interesting game against the Chiefs this week, which I don't necessarily think is going to be a just kind of a walkover game for the Chiefs. Again, they're starting a practice squad quarterback, and I'm not necessarily saying Andy Reid's losing sleep at night over Fernando Mendoza, but at the same time, it's like, would he rather not play Fernando Mendoza every year for the next, maybe 10, 15 years if it does work out like it's supposed to be? I don't really trust the Raiders as far as I can throw them to develop a quarterback and build a team around them. It's looking like they're going to lose Max Crosby next year potentially as well. That situation has just turned to shit. But, should they can Pete Carroll? And that's kind of one of the things, like I just mentioned, do I really trust the Raiders to make the right move? Pete Carroll said, I think he said it yesterday, he was kind of joking around saying that he doesn't really know what's going on with the Raiders and whether or not he's staying, but he clearly, he looks like he knows that's kind of a dead man walking in that organization. First off, Pete Carroll's days are just done as a head coach. Remember some about his last few years in Seattle. He was known for having an outdated scheme. The players were just kind of tired of playing for him. He's just old. These old head coaches, look at Bill Belichick. These guys 10 years ago were ruling. And meanwhile, Belichick obviously had a higher peak than Pete Carroll in terms of success as a head coach in the NFL. But, the success Pete Carroll had in college, in the NFL, he's a great coach. He's an all-time coach. And he was he was literally seen as outdated in Seattle. And people were just like, Pete Carroll may never coach again. And they went on, they got Mike McDonald, and look at the Seahawks now, man. They are thriving. under Mike Macdonald. A young defensive head coach. Pete Carroll's a defensive head coach. Mike Macdonald is just younger, kind of knows more, has a better scheme, or knows more about today's NFL. I'm not saying that Pete Carroll doesn't know anything about today's NFL, but kind of just knows how to get to the players better than Pete Carroll does, to be honest with you. And clearly, Pete Carroll's message, he doesn't really have one. I think he's just kind of out there having fun, to be honest with you. Whatever fun he can have. And I think he knows he's not going to be coaching Fernando Mendoza next year. And look, if I'm the Raiders, I'm wiping it clean. I'm trading Max Crosby, which you can still get a first, maybe 2 firsts for him. I mean, well, I think he's going to be 30 next year, but you see the level Myles Garrett's playing at 31 or something like that? 31 or something like that. And, Max Crosby, he's probably the hardest, like, in terms of just plays hard. He's like the hardest playing player in the NFL. Like, that guy is probably not nearly as athletic as Myles Garrett, maybe even Nick Bosa, but he just plays his ass off through injuries for just a shit organization that hasn't done anything, literally like anything in years. I'm talking like 20, 25 years. What have the Raiders done? I think since John Gruden's first stint. They had that year with Derek Carr back in like 2016, but he ended up getting hurt. They didn't really do anything. I mean, he plays his ass off. And you're kind of just wasting him there. And if you're the Raiders, you have to look at your future. You're about to get maybe a potential franchise quarterback. Mendoza's not a guarantee to be a star in this league, but for the first time in a long time, it feels like the Raiders really have a shot at having a franchise quarterback since Derek Carr. Derek Carr hasn't been there in years now. And even the last couple of years of Derek Carr, people were like, we know what we're getting with Derek Carr. Can we really win a Super Bowl with him? Probably not. Fernando Mendoza has a lot more upside than Derek Carr did. And this is the first time in a long time for the Raiders. So I'd say, hey, it's not necessarily, I mentioned it earlier in the video, the strongest head coaching cycle, but maybe you can get a guy like Robert Saleh, young, lots of energy. And I know his stint with the Jets wasn't the best, but like whose stint with the Jets is really the best, to be honest with you? Like, name you, maybe besides Rex Ryan. What was that, 15, 16 years ago since those successful years with Rex Ryan. So I don't know, man. They've got to figure out something. I don't see how you can bring back Pete Carroll. I thought with the Pete Carroll hiring this year, I thought it would actually kind of bring some sort of stability. I was like, damn, the Raiders actually kind of don't have that bad of a team this year. I was like, Geno, who I don't necessarily think is the greatest quarterback in the world, but he is pretty good. I was like, they traded for him. You got Brock Bowers, you got Crosby, they had Jacoby Myers. I was like, this team's actually probably not going to be too bad. I thought Pete Carroll kind of brings some form of life, but, now that you look at it, it's like you looked at his last few years in Seattle, outdated, and really just the whole Raiders roster in general. It's just not good. You look at them, they're just really not competitive. Their offensive line is just trash. They really are. They have Colton Miller, the left tackle, but besides that, I mean, what else do they really have? They just don't have much of anything. So it's going to be longer than a 1-year rebuild and another head coaching hire, but I think you've got to try to figure out something because Pete Carroll's absolutely not your long-term answer. Whether or not this year he went 11-6 and made the playoffs, he's the oldest coach in the NFL, and he looks great for his age, but he's not the long-term answer at all. I think if you're the Raiders, you have to be looking for the future and the long-term solution at this point, especially when you get a guy who is potentially your franchise quarterback this year. It's looking like they're going to get Mendoza. So I'd move off of this Pete Carroll thing as soon as humanly possible. Aaron Glenn here, kind of talking about another head coach. And I've talked a lot about head coaches today in general, but, we're getting to that time of year with head coaches, man, to where it's like, who's staying and who the hell's leaving? And Aaron Glenn, I think, is a pretty interesting one because he's a first-year hire as a head coach. And for the Jets, who do not have a successful history of head coaching hirings at all. I mean, they just don't. And one thing with Aaron Glenn and where I'm going to defend him is like, people are saying he's one and done, and apparently his job is not safe in New York. But it's like, dude, you're sticking him out there with, what's his name, Brady Cook, Justin Fields, who they just ridiculously overpaid, 2 years, $40 million, didn't do anything with with the Jets at all. Tyrod Taylor. I can't get on a head coach who does not have a quarterback. I say there's two positions in the NFL that are the most important. Pass rusher, or three. Pass rusher, offensive line, a tackle, an edge rusher, and a quarterback. And obviously quarterback's number one. And if you don't even have a resemblance of a starting quarterback in the NFL, look, we're not even talking like, well, he doesn't even have, he may have the 20th best quarterback at best. Like, Aaron Glenn doesn't even have a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. People love Justin Fields. I've always wanted to see Justin Fields succeed. I thought the Patriots were going to draft Justin Fields, and the Bears ended up taking him, and, they ended up getting Mac Jones, of course, but, look, I've always wanted Justin Fields to succeed. I've seen him on the Steelers last year, but I think there's a reason the Steelers did not re-sign Justin Fields, because he's just not that good. We've seen him in his years with Chicago, and again, Matt Eberflus, that situation. You've seen Caleb Williams with Matt Eberflus and that group of clowns over there in Chicago. They were just a joke. And look at it now with Ben Johnson. Has Justin Fields really ever had a serious head coach? He had one with Mike Tomlin, and he did look pretty good under it. So maybe if there's a chance you get him with a real organization, a real head coach. Not saying Aaron Glenn isn't a real head coach because he's so unproven, but I think you got to give him another shot. You've got to give him a quarterback at least. And if you go out there, you roll out, and you get a decent quarterback, whether or not you go to sign Malik Willis, you draft one, and the offense plays great, but his defense sucks, and the team kind of starts falling apart. Maybe kind of like a little bit of a watered down Tampa Bay situation. The Jets roster isn't nearly as good as the Tampa Bay roster, but if they're going out there and it's looking like they actually do play well, but then they're just kind of falling apart because there's a little bit of toxicity in the locker room, this and that, whatever it is, then Aaron Glenn's got to go. But, Jesus. Switch Mike Vrabel to coach the Jets this year, and potentially it was looking like Mike Vrabel may have went to the Jets if the Patriots job wasn't open, or if they ended up hiring Ben Johnson or something like that, potentially. Mike Vrabel wouldn't have switched his team around. Look at what he's done with the Patriots. Like, if Ben Johnson was on the Jets, do you think the Jets would be 13-4 or whatever the Bears are going to finish, 12-5, 11-6? Hell no. Not in a million years. Maybe the Jets would maybe have another win or two, maybe, but it would look like a disaster. It would. I don't see in any way the I don't really see how you fire Aaron Glenn. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think you've got to give him a quarterback next year, especially with just your long history of non-successes at the head coach, at the head coaching position. I don't see it. So the last thing I want to talk about here today is the Steelers and the Ravens, that potential last playoff spot. I just want to go over this briefly real quick. This is going to be a hell of a game. People kind of describe this game as kind of being like a bloodbath of a game. It doesn't quite have that feel. The Ravens and Steelers rivalry doesn't quite have that feel as it did back when Flacco and Roethlisberger, Palomalu, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, like when those guys were all playing there, it doesn't quite have that feel as, how it used to. Again, I don't necessarily think I do think it has to do with those players, and those guys are all like Hall of Famers, maybe not necessarily Flacco, but when you got Ray Lewis and those guys out there, man, it's hard for it not to be just a hard-hitting, just malicious game. And that's the kind of football games you don't really see much anymore. Again, the league's pivoted to an offensive league, protecting QBs, protecting players. You don't have Palomalu all of a sudden rushing off the edge, just laying Joe Flacco out, just laying him on his ass, and he's just sitting there like, what the hell am I getting myself into right now? Like if it wasn't for the millions of dollars I'm making, there's no chance you could pay me $100,000 to do this. Like, that's how just vicious those games were. That's kind of the word that comes to mind when you used to think of the Ravens or the Steelers, is you used to think of like just a vicious, hard-hitting game. And you don't necessarily think of it quite like that anymore. Again, and people, if you're a Baltimore or a Steelers fan, you're like, well, you're a Patriots fan. What the hell do you know about this rivalry? I live in a household full of Ravens fans, and I live 20 minutes away from M&T Bank Stadium. My friends are all diehard Ravens fans. Like, Trust me, I know a lot about this rivalry. I've lived through it my whole life. Even though I'm not a Ravens fan, I've always enjoyed watching it. This game this week is, I don't really know who's going to win, to be honest with you. I don't know if Lamar's going to play. Supposedly it's looking like he's going to shape up to play or suit up to play. Sorry. Look, if he doesn't play, I'm going to tell you one thing. I think the fan base is going to riot, for one. They are not going to be happy if Lamar Jackson is not playing this game this weekend. You see Justin Herbert getting off the damn surgery table to play, or getting off the damn operating table a few weeks ago to play against the Eagles. Had surgery on his wrist like 3 days before he went out on the field to play Philadelphia, and he ended up beating them. So if Lamar doesn't play, man, it's going to be a lot of talk there about Lamar, because I've been seeing a lot of the trade talk, shit, a lot of stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. But the Steelers, man, DK Metcalf. One thing about the Steelers is like choking that situation away, losing against the Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders. Look, any given Sunday. That's why I say with the Patriots, like when people say the cupcake schedule bullshit, it just drives me crazy. Like people say, oh, Drake May, he can't win the MVP because of his schedule. You know who he beat? He beat the Falcons and the Panthers. You know who didn't? Matt Stafford. I mean, he also beat the Cleveland Browns. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, Pittsburgh goes in, and even though it's a divisional game, they see each other twice a year. They went in and lost in a very high-pressure situation where you look, and it's like, yeah, they're missing DK Metcalf, but it's like, first off, it's crazy to see how much DK Metcalf made a difference, and it's like, is DK Metcalf even a top 10 to 15 receiver in the league right now? Probably not. Maybe at his best, he's top 15, but the impact he has on that team is pretty ridiculous. That goes to show you, like, kind of how bad that offense really is without him. They're out there rolling with Marquez Valdes-Scantling throwing it to him 3 times in the end zone, 3 straight times in the end zone, and it looked like a mess. Mind you, Rodgers and Scantling had played together years prior to this, so it's like those guys do have some sort of chemistry. But I guess when you don't have Devontae Adams on the other side of the ball, and you got your number one corner guarding Valdes-Scantling, it's tough. So, I mean, that offense is going to look like a disaster against the Ravens. So they're going to have to rely on their defense. Again, probably no TJ Watt, no DK Metcalf. It's going to be a tough game for the Steelers. And I said a few weeks ago, I thought there was like going to be maybe a 4% chance the Ravens were going to get into the playoffs. I was like, there's no way the Cleveland Browns beat the Steelers. I don't even trust the Ravens to beat the Packers on Saturday. I was like, do I even really trust the Ravens doing that? And they ended up doing that, and then Cleveland ended up getting the win. So, good for them, man. But one thing with the Ravens is this week, if they're going to have to run the ball with Derrick Henry, whether or not John Harbaugh likes playing flat, or whether he wants to play flashy, which we know John Harbaugh loves playing flashy ball, loves going out there, singing Lamar, extend plays, this and that. Clearly, he's hurt. Whether or not you want Lamar to throw the ball 50 times a game, you can't do it because he's hurt to hell. Clearly, he just is. So they've apparently this game too has a lot on the line with these two head coaches, with John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, and people are like, oh, whichever one loses is going to be the one who gets fired. I think that's a pretty interesting thing to think about as well. So that's something to keep an eye on with this game. But that's about all I got here today, y'all. Hope you all liked the video. Feels good to be back here recording for you guys. Look, I got the new mic stand up. If you're new to the podcast, this is the first podcast, or the first episode with the mic stand up, man. I really like it. Feel a lot more kind of free.